Now, there's been a lot of debate online about what is the best year for music. A lot of it has to do with how old you were when the music was released. But there's been recent scientific studies that have shown that 1979 is actually the best year for music. How do we know that? Well, because I was young then.
Number 20, The Human League Reproduction.
Now, before they were working as waitresses in cocktail bars and extolling the virtues of feeling fascination, the lopsided hairstylings of one Phil Oakey and the nerdy electronic doodlings of Martin Ware and Ian Marsh produced one of the earliest electronic albums of the post-punk era. It contains hints of their pop music future with songs like Blind Youth, Empire State Human, and a cracking version of You've Lost That Lonely Feeling. As these electronic instruments required a lot of controlling in the early days, the album does feel like two guys learning how to drive a manual, or indeed read a manual. But this was an important step towards what Martin and Ian were to do later with Heaven 17, a major milestone in the history of synth pop.
Number 19, the B-52s debut album.
Okay, now this album really came out of nowhere. Actually, it came out of Athens, Georgia, via Planet Claire. The B-52s were indeed ploughing their own furrow and were not consciously a part of any particular musical movement. But they were quirky enough and bizarre enough to fit right into the new wave beach party that was just about to happen. When they arrived on the scene, everybody had matching towels. Highlights were Dance This Mess Around, 52 Girls, and of course the American national anthem, Rock Lobster.
Number 18, Gary Newman, The Pleasure Principle.
So if the Tubeway Army album brought synth music to the top 40, then this album here really made Gary Newman a household name, and not just in his own household. Gary completely abandoned the guitar on this album, making it a truly synth-driven vehicle. The single Cars topped the UK charts and became his only hit in the US. This album also includes a song called M.E., the end of side 1, and this was sampled by Basement Jaxx for Where's Your Head At?
Number 17, Blondie, Eat to the Beat.
So this was the follow-up to Blondie's Parallel Lines and the ubiquitous Heart of Glass single, which was everywhere at the time. Once again produced by Mike Chapman, this was kind of Parallel Lines Part 2. But it had some wicked tunes on it like Dreaming, Atomic, The Hardest Part, Accidents Never Happen. Great album.
Number 16, The Cars, Candy O.
Now, sometimes you'll find this album parked along some other sort of classic rock vehicles that really don't belong in the same car park. But once you get behind the wheel of this album and take it for a spin around the block, you'll find it irresistible. Okay, there are some great pop songs in here like Let's Go, It's All I Can Do, Dangerous Type, but there's still a couple of left field songs here like Shooby-Doo, You Can't Hold On Too Long, Lust for Kicks that have a good fuel injection of new wave quirkiness.
Number 15, The Clash, London Calling.
This was the album where The Clash loosened the punk rock straitjacket and embraced a few other styles of music. The rockabilly wasn't really to my liking, but Spanish Bombs, Lost in the Supermarket, The Guns of Brixton, Death or Glory, and of course the iconic title track, which were reasons to buy a first-class ticket and board this train in vain.
Number 14, Talking Heads, Fear of Music.
After more songs about buildings and food, the Talking Heads gave us more songs about buildings and food, but this time wrapped in a sometimes funky, sometimes African, sometimes post-punk veneer. It contains the original version of Life During Wartime, Heaven, and a great song called Cities. This album is a precursor to their magnum opus, Remain in Light, which is well worth a listen. But there was also a song on the album called Drugs, which had a recording of birds at the beginning. Now, these birds were recorded at Lone Pine Sanctuary in my hometown of Brisbane. So I feel like I have an attachment to this album, even though it's only vicariously through Antipodean ornithology. I knew I wasn't going to be able to say that. Vicariously through Antipodean ornithology. That's the best I can do.
Number 13, Adam and the Ants, Dirk Wears White Socks.
So the year before Adam Ant took over the world and became a highwayman and Native American pop star, he, along with various assorted ants, produced a post-punk classic that, although hated by the critics of the time, has become something of a cult favourite. Okay, so this features Car Trouble, Kick, Digital Tenderness, Cleopatra. So this album isn't for everyone, but if you like Kings of the Wild Frontier, I think you'll find this quite interesting. Okay, so my next 3 choices are from New Wave's triumvirate of angry young men. Graham Parker, Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello.
Number 12, Graham Parker, Squeezing Out Sparks.
So I saw Graham Parker in 1978, and a year later, he released this. a perfect encapsulation of his career thus far. Okay, here we go. With great songwriting from a singer spitting venom from between gritted teeth and blending melody with anarchy under the shades of tinted shades, looking forward at anger while looking back at soul and R&B. Featuring local girls, passion is no ordinary word, and a brilliant protection. It also includes one of the most sensitive and controversial songs about abortion, called You Can't Be Too Strong. Check it out.
Number 11, Joe Jackson, Look Sharp.
Joe hit us with a debut album of near-perfect pop songs that thundered by like a freight train and was over in a little more than 30 minutes. It didn't stop at the station. It didn't take any prisoners. It looked lean. It looked sharp. It's got One More Time, Sunday Papers, Look Sharp, Fools in Love, and of course the classic single, Is She Really Going Out With Him? There isn't a bad song on this album.
Number 10, Elvis Costello, Armed Forces.
This is the album that took Elvis Costello to the mainstream. It was a stream he didn't really take to, and he consequently got out, dried himself off, and he kind of stayed away from the mainstream for the rest of his career. Kicking off with Accidents Will Happen, the album doesn't let up with song after song containing infectious melodies, great musical and vocal arrangements, and of course his lyrical wordplay, which became a staple of his. The attractions were firing on all cylinders, and the production from Nick Lowe was pitch perfect for the time.
Number 9, The Cure, Three Imaginary Boys.
So the songs on this album were played incessantly on radio station 4ZZZ in Brisbane in 1979. So the following year, in 1980, when they toured, everyone went along to the Queensland University Refec to see what the band was all about. This album, however, was to be a standalone album of new wave pop, as after this, The Cure changed tack and wanted to play music a little more like Siouxsie and the Banshees, and they became darker and more atmospheric. But I love this album for its naivety, its freshness, and it was showing the world what a unique guy this Robert Smith was. This is actually the UK pressing of the album. The album that was released in Australia and the US was called Boys Don't Cry, and it had Boys Don't Cry on it. So this version doesn't have Boys Don't Cry on it, but it's still a lot of classic songs on there, like 10:15 and Saturday Night, Subway Song, Jumping Someone Else's Train, Fire in Cairo, and Three Imaginary Boys, of course.
Number 8, The Specials debut album.
So this album was like ground zero for people into ska music. The main songwriter Jerry Dammers was a fan of the music of this era in the 60s and set about getting a band together and paying tribute to the artist who originally created this genre. There are a lot of covers on this album, but the album still jumps, shakes, quivers and quakes. It contains A Message to You, Rudy, Doesn't Make It All Right, Too Much Too Young. It also, the Australian version had Gangsters on it, which the English version didn't. And Gangsters, to my ears, is their best song. Well, apart from Ghost Town.
Number 7, Magazine, Second-Hand Daylight.
While this may not be the best Magazine album, it contains a lot of classics of the era and kind of cements them as leaders of the genre. Feed the Enemy, Rhythm of Cruelty, and Permafrost are genre-defining songs, and Howard DeVosa's voice is iconic. I saw them live in 1980, and they didn't disappoint. Now, there are those that think that the correct use of soap is the best album, but that was the following year, and we're talking about 1979, goddammit.
Number 6, The Police, Regatta de Blanc.
Okay, many fans of the genre dismiss the Police as a bandwagon-jumping pop band of no real worth. But I put it to you that they are not only a valid part of the post-punk genre, they were ahead of the game when it came to arrangement, song structure, fluid bass lines, inventive drumming, shimmering guitar parts, and great vocal melodies. Whilst the first album was kind of them finding their feet, and the album after this was their pop album, this album stood on its own as creative, experimental, a little indulgent, and commercial. It had hits, Message in a Bottle, Walking on the Moon, Bed's Too Big, but also the title track, an instrumental that won a Grammy, Bring on the Night, Does Everyone Stare, Contact. For my money, this is the best Police album.
Number 5, Gang of Four, Entertainment.
So the Gang of Four jumped out the gates with this classic in 1979 and placed themselves at the forefront of this genre with this formidable debut. That's all the 4 words I've got. Andy Gill's guitar work inspiring a legion of wannabe guitarists, and Dave Allen's bass lines underpinning John King's political lyrics, with Hugo Burnham driving the whole thing forward with relentless killer beats. They went through a few configurations over the years, but this classic lineup, with an essence so rare, released an album that you could call solid gold, even though they call their next album solid gold. I won't mention any specific songs on the album, just get it. Listen to it.
Number 4, The Jam, Setting Suns.
It's hard for fans to choose the best album from The Jam, but in 1979, they released this album, Setting Suns. It was definitely my favourite. All killer, no filler. This fella, Paul Weller, was in fine form when he wrote these. Girls on the Phone, Thick as Thieves, Burning Sky, Eaton Rifles, and a cover of the old Martha and the Vandellas song, Heatwave. Bruce and Rick were an amazing rhythm section. These modifiable mods from the modern world not only kicked it out of the parker, but there were some almost prog arrangements that were handled with aplomb. What a catalyst they turned out to be. Bruce also wrote and sang Smithers Jones, which is one of the all-time great Jam songs.
Number 3, Japan, Quiet Life.
Well, if there was one band that was responsible for creating the 80s sound before the 80s had even begun, it was Japan, who with this album set the groundwork for the new romantic movement and made incredibly lush arrangements and heavy eyeliner go hand in hand. They made Giorgio Moroder cool again. They worked with Roxy Music producer John Punter, so you knew where his head was at. And even David Sylvian changed his singing voice to that more baritone style that was similar to Brian Ferry. So put this on your turntable if you're living the quiet life or if you're going to all tomorrow's parties.
Number 2, XTC, Drums and Wires.
Now, the first 2 XTC albums were great, but a little too esoteric for mass consumption. The 2 albums after this one were more mainstream, that were a little easier for people who weren't familiar with XTC to take on board. This album, Drums and Wires, was a great transitional album bridging the 2 eras. It had arguably their first hit single, Making Plans for Nigel, the closest thing they had to a traditional pop song in 10 Feet Tall. There was Reel by Reel, Scissor Man, Complicated Game, so many great songs and a flood of interesting and inventive ideas. This album was also a major influence on Australian bands at the time. A great band, an era-defining album, and a creative force to be reckoned with. It was such a shame that they stopped touring after 1982.
Number 1, Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures.
Okay, I know this is a little predictable, but I don't think I can overstate how much of a game changer this album was. On first listen back in 1979, it was apparent that a cultural shift had happened. The music was slower, not so aggressive. They had created a distinct sound and mood. Ian Curtis's lyrics were very different to the standard punk fare. John Savage wrote in 1979, Unknown Pleasures may well be one of the best English debut LPs of the year. And many years later, All Music magazine said, Unknown Pleasures was all visceral, all emotional, all theatrical, all perfect, one of the best albums ever. So that's it. That's my top 20 albums of 1979. If you think there was a better year for music, I've got some bad news for you.